3 years. I sent money every single month. So why does it look like nobody's lived here in months? Where are my parents' children? Where is anyone? They've been alone in here for 2 weeks. Sir, you need to calm down. Dad, it's me. It's Michael. I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere, I promise you that. I built all of this so they'd never suffer again. And while I was building it, they were suffering alone. My brother and sister walked away from the people who gave us everything. Now it's my turn to show them what family actually means.
If you had told Michael Turner 10 years ago that the two people who raised him, who fed him, clothed him, and worked their hands raw to keep a roof over his head, would end up abandoned in a falling down house with nobody checking on them, he would have called you a liar. But that's exactly what he found the night he came home. And before you keep watching, if stories about family, betrayal, and second chances move you the way they move me, do me a favor and hit that like button. And subscribe to the channel, because trust me, you do not want to miss how this story ends. Michael grew up in Millbrook, a small town where everybody knew everybody, and where his parents, Robert and Grace Turner, ran a modest hardware store on Main Street. Robert was the kind of man who fixed things, literally and figuratively. He could rebuild a lawnmower engine in an afternoon and repair a broken heart with a single sentence of quiet wisdom. Grace was the town's unofficial den mother, always the first to bring a casserole to a grieving family, always the last to ask for anything in return. Together they raised 3 children. Kevin, the oldest, sharp-tongued and ambitious from the moment he could talk. Denise, the middle child, beautiful and restless, always chasing something bigger than Millbrook. And Michael, the youngest, quiet, observant, the one who noticed when his mother skipped dinner so there'd be enough for everyone else. The hardware store never made the family rich, but it made them whole. Robert and Grace poured every spare dollar into their children's futures, school supplies, sports fees, Kevin's community college tuition, Denise's cosmetology courses. Michael, meanwhile, worked the counter after school, stocked shelves on weekends, and watched his parents give and give until there was nothing left for themselves. He remembered the year his mother wore the same winter coat for the 5th season in a row because the boys need new coats first. "Sweetheart, I'm fine." He remembered his father skipping his own doctor's appointment because the store's roof needed fixing before winter. Those memories planted something in Michael that never left him, a fierce, quiet determination to one day give his parents back everything they had given away. At 19, Michael left Millbrook with $300, a duffel bag, and a plan. He worked construction by day and studied logistics and supply chain management by night, sleeping 4 hours if he was lucky. He failed twice trying to start his own delivery and freight brokerage business, losing what little savings he had both times. But Michael had inherited his father's stubbornness and his mother's refusal to quit on people, including himself. On his 3rd attempt, he built a regional freight coordination company that solved a problem larger corporations were too slow to notice, connecting small manufacturers with reliable, affordable shipping routes. Within 6 years, Turner Logistics Group had contracts across 4 states. Within 10, Michael was a millionaire many times over, though you would never have known it from how he lived. He kept driving the same car for years. He still called his parents every single Sunday at 6 o'clock. Without fail, and every single month, like clockwork. He wired $5,000 into their account, enough, he believed, to make sure they never had to worry about anything ever again. What Michael didn't know, what he had no way of knowing. 3 states away and buried in board meetings and shipping contracts was that his siblings had quietly, steadily, drifted away from Millbrook and from their aging parents. Kevin had moved to the city for a sales job. Married a woman named Tara who made it clear early on that small-town visits were not her idea of a good weekend. Denise had followed a boyfriend to another state. chasing a life she thought looked more glamorous than anything Millbrook could offer. Both of them called their parents less and less. Birthdays were forgotten, then holidays, then eventually the calls themselves stopped altogether, replaced by the occasional text that read "thinking of you," and nothing more. Robert and Grace never told Michael the full truth. Every Sunday call, when Michael asked how Kevin and Denise were doing, Grace would say, "Oh, you know them, busy with their own lives," and change the subject. She didn't want to burden her youngest son, the one who was already carrying the weight of an entire company on his shoulders. Robert, proud man that he was, certainly wasn't going to admit that his other two children barely visited anymore. So the truth stayed buried, hidden beneath cheerful voices and vague half-answers. For almost 3 years, then Robert had a stroke. It happened on a quiet Tuesday afternoon in the hardware store, the same store he had run for 40 years. A regular customer found him collapsed behind the counter and called for help. Grace, at 70 years old, tried to manage the hospital visits, the medication schedules, the insurance paperwork, and the empty house all by herself. She called Kevin. He said he'd try to come when work calms down. She called Denise. Denise said she was in the middle of something big right now and would call back. Neither of them ever did. For 2 weeks, Grace shuttled back and forth to the hospital alone, growing thinner and more exhausted by the day, telling no one, not even Michael, because she didn't want to interrupt whatever important deal he was closing. It wasn't until Michael's Sunday call went to voicemail 3 times in a row that alarm bells finally rang in his mind. Something was wrong. His mother never missed his call. Michael dropped everything. He canceled a board meeting worth $11 million, boarded the first flight to the closest airport to Millbrook, and rented a car for the 2-hour drive into town, arriving as the sun was beginning to set. The house was dark. The mailbox was stuffed with unopened bills and letters. The porch light flickered weakly, one bulb away from dying completely. His stomach dropped. This wasn't the home he remembered. Warm windows and the smell of his mother's cooking drifting into the yard. This was a house that looked abandoned. He found his mother's note taped to the refrigerator, her handwriting shaky. "At the hospital with your father. Room 204. Didn't want to worry anyone." Michael's blood ran cold. Worry anyone? As if he was just anyone. He drove straight to Millbrook General, running through the corridors until he reached room 204. Inside, he found his father pale and thin against white sheets, and 4 in his arm, and his mother asleep upright in a hard plastic chair beside the bed, her coat still on, as though she hadn't allowed herself the comfort of taking it off. Michael's chest tightened with a grief he had never felt before. He gently woke his mother, and when she opened her eyes and saw her youngest son standing there, she broke down completely, apologizing over and over for not telling him sooner, terrified she'd let him down by not handling it herself. "You didn't let anyone down," Michael told her, holding her trembling hands. "But where is everyone else? Where's Kevin? Where's Denise?" 2 weeks, Mom. You've been doing this alone for 2 weeks. Grace's silence told him everything he needed to know. Over the following days, as his father slowly stabilized, Michael learned the full truth, not just about the stroke, but about the years leading up to it. The skipped holidays, the unreturned calls, the birthday cards that went unanswered, the fact that his parents had been slowly, quietly abandoned by 2 of their own children while Michael, unaware, sent money from 3 states away, believing it was enough. He realized with a shame that sat heavy in his stomach that money had never been the thing his parents needed most. They needed presence. They needed someone to sit beside them in a hospital chair at 2 in the morning. And he hadn't been there either, not because he didn't care, but because he had trusted his siblings to fill the space he couldn't. Michael called Kevin first. The conversation was short and bitter. Kevin claimed he'd been swamped, that he didn't. No, it was that serious, and most infuriating of all, that Michael was always better at handling this family stuff. Anyway, Denise's response was somehow worse. A text message reading, "So sorry. I really can't get away right now. Keep me posted." Followed by nothing else for 3 days. Something in Michael shifted permanently in that hospital room. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He simply made a decision, the same quiet, stubborn kind of decision that had built his entire company from nothing. He was done waiting for his siblings to show up. He would rebuild what they had let fall apart, brick by brick. With his own 2 hands, he took an indefinite leave from Turner Logistics Group, moving his most trusted operations manager into a temporary leadership role. He hired contractors to repair the farmhouse, a new roof, updated wiring, a repaired porch light that no longer flickered. He brought in a part-time home health aide for his father's recovery and had groceries delivered weekly so his mother would never again face an empty refrigerator alone. He sat with his father through physical therapy sessions, learning patience he never knew he had, cheering quietly every time Robert took another shaky step down the hospital corridor. He took his mother to lunch every single day. His parents were both stable enough for it, letting her talk, letting her cry, letting her finally set down the weight she'd been carrying by herself. Word travels fast in a small town. And it wasn't long before Kevin and Denise heard that Michael had moved back to Millbrook, that he'd taken over their parents' care completely, that the town was talking about how the successful one had dropped everything for family while the other 2 had disappeared. Kevin called first, his tone defensive, insisting he wanted to make things right. Denise followed a few days later, tearfully explaining she'd just gotten caught up in her own life. Michael listened to both of them. He didn't slam the door on his siblings. His mother wouldn't have wanted that, and deep down, neither did he. But he was no longer willing to let his parents' well-being depend on promises that evaporated the moment life got inconvenient. He set clear terms, real visits, not phone calls made out of guilt. Real involvement in their parents' care, not performative concern once the crisis had already passed. And most importantly, an honest apology to Grace and Robert, not to Michael, not to smooth things over, but directly to the 2 people who had spent a lifetime giving everything they had got. It took months. Kevin, to his credit, eventually began driving up every other weekend. Awkward at first, then slowly more present, learning how to actually sit with his father instead of checking his phone every 5 minutes. Denise took longer, wrestling with her own guilt before finally showing up one Sunday afternoon with flowers and red swollen eyes, kneeling by her mother's chair and apologizing in a way that finally sounded real. Robert recovered slowly but steadily, walking with a cane but walking nonetheless, back behind the counter of the hardware store part-time within the year, insisting he just liked seeing people's faces. Grace stopped wearing her coat indoors. The porch light stayed on every single night, a small, steady glow that Michael had made sure of himself. A year later, standing on that same porch, freshly painted and finally fully lit, Michael watched his parents sitting together on a new porch swing he'd had built for them, laughing about something Robert had said, Kevin's car pulling into the driveway for a Sunday visit, Denise's laughter carrying from inside the kitchen where she was helping her mother cook. It wasn't perfect. The years of absence couldn't be erased with a few months of effort. But it was real, and it was healing. And it was theirs. Michael learned something in that hospital room that no business degree or company valuation could have taught him. That showing up matters more than any amount of money ever could. That love isn't measured in wire transfers, and that family, real family, is built one Sunday dinner, one hospital visit, one honest apology at a time. He had spent a decade building an empire to give his parents a life free of struggle. In the end, what saved them wasn't his money at all. It was simply him coming home and refusing to leave again. If this story moved you even a little, make sure you're subscribed, because there are so many more stories like this one waiting for you. And I promise, you won't want to miss what's coming next.